Welcome back to ScaleSpeedworks. My name's Mike. Well, it's going to be the first time I'm doing this, but we're going to do a build along on the USACC group build. So let's see what we've got. Take the top cover off. I've cut off the chrome pieces, and I'm sorry it's dark in here. I've cut off everything that I want to keep chrome. I have valve covers and some other miscellaneous stuff in here. I have the tires, not going to be using these, so let's take these out. Those are really, really nice tires, by the way. I've cut the other pieces from the sprue. What we're going to do is we're going to take these and we're going to wash them in a bucket of warm water and dish detergent. Just concentrated Dawn dish detergent, whatever you have, all right? Let's mention this. Plastic parts, still sealed. We don't need to open those yet. All right, let's go along for the ride. All right, I spared you guys to walk outside. So what I have here is a 3-gallon bucket. Yeah, 3-gallon bucket. And I know it doesn't look like much in there, but trust me, water and dish detergent. Just swirled it around. Drop our parts in there, and I got my parts laid out right here. So let's put all of those in there. Again, you see most everything cut off from the sprue. Some stuff it's not, but everything goes in. All right. You guys don't need to watch me putting the rest of this stuff in. So give me just a second, and I'll be right back. All right, we got everything emptied out. What I did is I pulled everything out, let it dry a little bit, filled the bucket up again with clean water. And now I'm just swishing the parts around, making sure that there's no soap residue on anything, and there's not. So we're going to pull all these out, and instead of setting them on the sidewalk here to dry this time, we're going to take them inside into the model room and let them dry in there. That way there's hopefully a little bit less chance of them getting dusty or dirty since we're outside and it's windy out here. It's pollen season, so there's pollen that can get on here. We're going to avoid all that. Just take everything out and let it dry on our workbench. All right, so we're letting everything air dry. It's been about an hour. I'd say most of this is about 90% dry. There's still a couple of spots that aren't completely dry, but that's not a big deal. This is a step where we go and I'm going to inspect everything. So now that I've test fit, made sure everything matches, let's get my glue, the old go-to Tamiya extra thin. Let's hold that right there. So when I glue parts, and I'm going to show you on the engine as well, what I like to do is pretty much paint one side. I'll let it sit there, let it dry. I'll do the same thing to the other side. Get those nice and wet, let those dry for just a minute there. And I am dropping everything. What we'll do is we'll line those up, put those together, and we'll squeeze. And the reason I like to do it like this, a lot of guys hold the parts together and just let the glue seep in between the seam lines, and that's just fine. But when you do it this way, this glue is actually meant to melt the plastic together. So when you melt the plastic together on each side and you squeeze it together, you get a little bit of that styrene pushing out in this joint. And then once it's really glued and sealed up there, it takes just a little bit of sandpaper to really clean up that seam line, and that seam line just disappears. I'm going to get it clamped to hold that. Hold on one second. All right, we've got that all clamped up. Let that sit just for a couple minutes. It really doesn't take too long. So this is kind of the step, again, where I do a little bit of pre-assembly. I'll do some cutting, some gluing, some trimming, whatever I need to do to get all the parts ready and prepped for paint. So let's take a look at that engine. Still a little damp. It's fine. Halves fit together. Excellent. So, and it might be hard to see, but there is a seam line right there down the middle. I don't like seam lines. We're going to get rid of that. So once again, I'm going to get my part out here. I need to get the Tamiya extra thin, and I'm going to just paint that edge. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. We're going to get the sides. And this is okay. It's okay to be a little bit messy. Not a big deal here. This is all going to be sanded down. I don't care if I get glue fingerprints on here. Squeeze those sides together. Sometimes might be worth getting a little bit of extra glue on there. So again, we're going to squeeze those parts together, and it's okay if you see a little styrene pop out in that seam. That's kind of what you want on this. Okay, that's actually holding together really well. That's because this did have a male-female connection. The parts just fit together, they lock together real good. And again, this Tamiya stuff, it holds really, really quickly. That's messy. I don't care. It's going to be sanded down, and then it's going to be painted. All right? That's that. The other thing that I do in this step, I like to paint as much as I can the parts on the tree. So here I have two connections. This is a light part. It's not real heavy. It's not real dense, like the seat or like the hood maybe. So I can hold this with just one clamp. So what I'm going to do, and I don't need this on here, part number 7. I know what part number 7 is. It's an exhaust part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip that off. That goes in the trash. Okay, now a little seam line there. Let's get that cleaned up. Done. Yeah, that's pretty much done. I'm pretty happy with that. All right, if there's a seam on this side, you can almost bet it's going to be a seam on this side as well. I'm going to go across the seam here. Now, you could bet if that seam's on the muffler, it's probably on the exhaust pipe here. It's on the catalytic converter, which I don't care because there's already a seam there. Revell did a great job hiding that seam. And it continues all the way down the exhaust. So do yourself a favor, get a piece of sandpaper, clean that up, okay, smooth that out, get rid of that seam line. Do it all and keep this little tab on here. That way you have something to hold while you either spray paint it or you brush paint it. And then real easy, just get that clipped off when you're done, when this part's all dry. All right, set that down. As you can see over here, I still have a lot of parts on the tree. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the instruction manual and I'm going to see which of these parts are all painted the same color. So once I've done that, we'll keep those on the tree, we'll cut off everything else, and we'll paint everything up. There is just a little bit of flash on here, not much. So we'll get that trimmed up. So again, pre-assembly, read your instructions, see where everything goes. I know that goes in there because I read the instructions. That fits really good. Again, you're test fitting everything. Okay, the seam up here, this is why I don't always sand parts before I glue them. Can you guys see that fit on there? Those two edges contour perfectly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue them. Once they're in place, then I will sand them. Yeah, that's a great fit. So let's make sure we get a little bit of glue on there. I'm going to line up my edges, make sure that fits. Oh yeah, that's beautiful. It's a good fit right there. Let's do the same thing on this side. I think that's going to be good enough. Yeah, it's going to be good enough. I'm going to leave it like that. Okay. Doesn't matter. It's going to be behind the grill. And you're going to get some sandpaper and you're going to sand in these contours anyway. So now that I have that glued in, I can probably take this out. So let's do that. Let's get our sprue cutters. Cut nice and flat along there. And that's going to require very, very little sanding and very little cleanup once we're done. All right, we got most of the cab pre-assembled. This would also be a good time if you wish to get some parts assembled and installed onto the chassis. So maybe a suspension, if all that's going to be the same color. The battery box, I'm guessing that's what this is, and the fuel tank, those could be painted later. Do all your painting, paint everything the same color, and then come back. You can come back and either tape stuff off or carefully brush it by hand. Do whatever you want to do. But I would paint all of this the same color and then come back and touch that up later. So let me get the other kit that I'm going to be kit bashing with this, and I'll show you what we got. All right, so I've just cleaned up my parts, put everything back in the box, except for this. Don't want to lose this. So let's take that steering column out. We're going to keep this little piece attached on so we can paint this a little bit later. All right. This is the kit that I'm going to use to kit bash with the 55 Ford. Yeah, this is a Chevy. It's a lot newer. That doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is this right down here. Can you see that? 1/24. This is a 1/24 kit. The other kit is a 1/24 kit as well. Let's get inside this and take a look. Now I have opened this up before. That shouldn't matter. Let's take a look at these tires. Maybe I want to use these tires instead of the other ones. These tires are pretty nice, actually. They're kind of a hard rubber. Let's see how they compare. Oh yeah, those don't even compare. These resin printed tires are much, much nicer. They're also a little bit taller. You guys can see that. So definitely keeping those. But these are really nice tires. I really like these. And I'm going to find a use for them. So let's take out some more of the parts. I'm not going to use the engine. Here's what I'm going to use. And maybe this. So let's see. Let's clean the rest of this up. Put all this back so we don't lose it. Okay. Let's compare chassis. Let's do that first. Let's get rid of garbage. Our chassis look pretty similar, just about the same length. Okay. Let's line up the front spindle area. Actually, that's yeah, that's going to be trimmed off. That's annoying. Okay. And you guys might do stuff differently than I do. That's okay. I'm not saying my way is the right way. I'm saying this is how I do it. Yeah, these chassis are pretty similar. Okay, so the Chevy chassis, a hair wider. That doesn't really matter. Let's get the suspension cut off and let's see how they attach. Okay, so I got the two axles cut off. This is an old kit. You can see it's hollow underneath. Not the best quality, but I don't care. So let's see. That's going to be the rear axle. And so that's going to attach, looks like, outside the axle frame right there. Real nice. Has some pins in there. Positive mounting location. Get that on camera. There we go. Okay. Mounts up outside of the frame. That's great because that means I could get some styrene and I can put some styrene on the edges here and mount that axle up. I'm guessing this one mounts, looks like this one mounts onto the frame. Okay, still not a big deal. Helps if my drive shaft goes under there. All right, that's not a big deal. I don't care about that. We'll fix that later. Nothing's glued in. That one mounts on the frame. Okay, not a big deal. Let's check out the axle pins. Round on there, round on there. Not going to fit. Doesn't matter. I'll trim these off, and I'll probably glue these on directly. Maybe I will get a piece of styrene that's this diameter and put it on there, and that should be all right. So this looks great. I think, let's move that one out of the way. Yeah, I think this is going to be just fine. What I'll probably end up doing here, okay, so just a hair wider. What I'll probably do is get a piece of styrene, run it along the edge here. Well, I don't know if I'll run it along the whole edge or maybe just where these mount, just where the springs mount. But either way, it's not going to take much. Either a flat styrene sheet just cut out a little bit, or a styrene square cut and glued right there. Either way, this is going to be just fine. And this can always be raised, especially if you do styrene blocks. You can raise this up. I'll show you on this way. Okay, this can be raised this way with some styrene blocks just under here. Okay, so you can set your height. All right, the rear axle is going to be pretty much the same. I am going to need some styrene blocks that are going to have to go. Yeah, it's a lot wider. Not a big deal though. So I'll either get some styrene blocks and run them out this way, or I'll figure something out. But however I figure out how to do this, this is going to be pretty easy. So that's kind of where we're at. Definitely, I'm not going to use this chassis. The reason I'm not going to use this chassis, it's completely different. All right, I know they look the same. They're ladder frames, but this chassis, there's no way that this will fit under here with the interior and everything. It's not meant to. So we're just going to use these axles, and everything is going to be just fine. I will see you guys on the next one with a little update. All right, so I just want to clarify something that I explained earlier. Now, I did say don't worry about being sloppy and getting glue a little bit outside the lines here. Well, the reason I said that, let me get that in frame. The reason I said that is because this truck is not going to be a show truck. This truck is going to be a beater. It's going to be rusted. It's going to be weathered. And, you know, even if it was going to be a show car or show truck, it's okay to get a little sloppy. But if you're really going to put a nice paint job on this and shine this thing up, then you probably want to be a little bit more careful about how you assemble. Again, not saying that it's a mistake that can't be fixed, but save yourself some time. Take your time. Be careful when you're assembling. That way, when you go to paint and you go to do all your prep work, you have less work to do. I did notice I was cleaning up some seam lines on here. There's a nasty, nasty seam line that runs along the back of the cab. Okay, so make sure you get that ground down either with an X-Acto knife or with some sandpaper. And this body was super, super smooth. I took some 800 grit sandpaper and went over it and just kind of gave it a little bit of texture. You don't want to do too much. you just want to take that shine off. What else? So I can feel the seam line as it comes down here at the back of the door. That's something that you're going to want to take care of. Best thing to do, I recommend a sanding stick and get that cleaned up. Again, this is for my build. This is because this is not going to be a show truck. Okay, so I don't care too much, but I'm going to I'm going to sand this until that's smooth, satisfactory to me. And when I do that, I'm going to get the back of my X-Acto knife, and we're going to run it down in there and clean all of that out. Just like that, okay? Again, this is a 400 grit sanding stick. What I'm going to do after I do that is probably get some 600, probably get some 800, and maybe even 1,000, and really get that nice and smooth before I put paint on it. So just wanted to reiterate with the glue, again, I plan on having this truck be weathered. If I weren't, I'd probably be a little bit more careful gluing in parts. So again, what you do is up to you. I was a little messy. I did get some on the outside here, but with my 800 grit sandpaper that I had, a little bit of sanding work took that. Once the glue's dry, of course, you have to wait till it's dry. Once it's dry, it cleaned right up with a little bit of sandpaper. And again, I needed to rough up the texture anyway, to make sure the paint has something to hold on to. So in the end, not really a big deal. Anyway, for tuning in, I really appreciate it. Stay tuned for the next episode.